My name is Charles. I'm 45 years old, and I live in a house in the suburbs of Denver, Colorado. I work as a civil engineer and have always maintained a very structured routine. But everything changed when I began to notice something strange happening with my 8-year-old companion, Thor, an imposing Rottweiler who came to me as a puppy, abandoned in front of my office building. Thor had always been a protective dog, as is characteristic of the breed, but in recent months something had changed drastically in his behavior. At 8 years old, he was already in what veterinarians call the senior phase for large breed dogs, and I had noticed some typical changes: silver hairs on his muzzle, slightly slower movements, and a preference for resting more during the day. However, what intrigued me weren't these natural changes of aging. It was something much more mysterious and specific that began happening always at the same time, 3 in the morning. It all started on a rainy March night. I was sleeping soundly when a subtle noise woke me up. It wasn't a bark or a whine. It was the sound of Thor's nails walking across the hardwood floor of the living room. I looked at the clock. 2:58. I thought maybe he needed to go outside for bathroom needs and went back to sleep. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the upcoming chapters. The next morning, I didn't give much importance to the episode. Thor seemed normal, playful as always, though a bit calmer due to his age. But the following night, it happened again, and the next as well. Always at 3 in the morning sharp, I would hear Thor's steps throughout the house. Initially, I tried to ignore it, thinking it was just a phase or perhaps some physical discomfort related to age. Senior dogs can develop behavioral changes, including alterations in their sleep patterns. It was on the 5th consecutive night that my curiosity got the better of me. I decided to get up silently and investigate what my old friend was doing. What I discovered left me completely perplexed and at the same time deeply moved. Thor wasn't simply walking aimlessly around the house. He was executing a meticulous and systematic patrol, like a true security guard. I began observing him hidden in the hallway, and I could see his entire routine unfold with military precision that impressed me. First, he went to the front door. He would stand there for several seconds, sniffing and listening attentively to any noise that might come from the street. His ears moved with redoubled attention, capturing every sound from the sleeping neighborhood. Then he would head to the kitchen, where he checked the back door that led to the yard. The same ritual: stop, sniff, listen. Next, Thor would walk through all the windows of the house: living room, my bedroom, the guest room, and even the bathroom. At each one, he repeated the same cautious procedure. It was as if he was conducting a complete security check of the property. Most impressive was the silent efficiency with which he did all this. Thor, who during the day sometimes stumbled a bit due to age and more sensitive joints, during these nighttime rounds moved with a grace and precision that reminded me of when he was young. But what caught my attention most was his reaction when something really alerted him. On one of the nights I observed, he stopped suddenly near the living room window. His ears perked up, his body became tense, but he didn't bark. Instead, he simply positioned himself strategically near the window and stayed there motionless like a statue for almost 20 minutes. I could hear what had caught his attention: footsteps of someone walking on the sidewalk, probably a worker returning late from work or someone leaving very early for work. But Thor didn't know that. For him, it was a potential threat that needed to be monitored. What moved me deeply was realizing that even with advanced age, even with the physical limitations that age brought, Thor had developed his own way of continuing to be the family's protector. He had adapted his way of caring for us, creating a routine that didn't disturb our sleep, but still kept the house safe. During the following weeks, I continued discreetly observing this routine. Thor never missed his 3 a.m. watch shift. Rain or shine, cold or hot, he was there, fulfilling his self-imposed mission as a silent guardian. It was then that I began questioning myself. Could it be that other owners of senior dogs were living similar situations without knowing it? Could it be that Thor was sensing something I wasn't perceiving? Or could it be that it was simply his protective nature finding a new way to express itself in old age? After 2 weeks observing Thor's nighttime behavior, I decided to seek out Dr. Marina, the veterinarian who had been caring for my companion for years at her clinic in downtown Denver. She had known Thor since he was a puppy and had always been very attentive to the breed's particularities. "Mr. Charles," she said with a smile when I told her about the nighttime rounds, "this is more common than you might imagine in senior Rottweilers. The breed has a very strong protective instinct, and when they age, they frequently develop compensatory behaviors to continue performing their role as family guardians." She explained that dogs of Thor's age frequently go through significant behavioral changes. At 8 years old, Thor is officially in his senior years for a large breed dog. It's normal for him to sleep more during the day and have alterations in his nighttime sleep pattern, she continued, flipping through his medical records. "But why exactly at 3 in the morning?" I asked, curious. Dogs have a very acute time perception. It's possible that Thor has associated this time with some specific event, or simply developed this routine because it's when the house is quietest and he can better detect any anomaly, the veterinarian explained. During the consultation, she examined Thor carefully, checking his joints, hearing and vision, aspects that frequently change in senior dogs and can influence behavioral changes. He's in excellent general condition for his age. The joints show natural signs of aging, but nothing that warrants concern, she concluded. To continue following this incredible story, subscribe to the channel. Returning home, I began paying attention not only to Thor's rounds, but also to his behavior during the day. I noticed he had become more attached to me, following me around the house more frequently. When I left for work, he would become clearly anxious, positioning himself near the door until my return. It was a typical pattern of separation anxiety in senior dogs, something Dr. Marina had mentioned was common in this life stage. Thor was demonstrating a greater need for companionship and, at the same time, intensifying his role as house protector when I wasn't present. I then decided to conduct an experiment. On a Saturday night, when I wouldn't need to work the next day, I resolved to accompany Thor on his complete round, keeping myself at a safe distance so as not to interfere with his routine. At 2:55, like a Swiss watch, Thor got up from his bed in the living room and began his inspection. First, he went to the front door. He stayed there for exactly 3 minutes, with his ears attentive and his snout slightly raised, capturing any suspicious odor that might come from the street. Then he headed to the kitchen. The back door received the same meticulous attention. Thor sniffed the lower frame, where possible intruders would leave scent traces, and raised his head to listen for any movement in the yard. The sequence continued through the living room windows. There he spent more time, probably because this area offered the best view of the street and front garden. His front paws rested lightly on the windowsill while he observed the empty street, illuminated only by the streetlights. What impressed me most was when Thor reached my bedroom window. He looked at me as I pretended to be sleeping, and his tail moved slightly, a discreet signal that he knew I was well and safe. Then he continued his inspection through the window, checking if there was anything suspicious on the outside. Throughout the entire round, which lasted approximately 40 minutes, Thor didn't make a single unnecessary noise. His movements were calculated and silent, an impressive adaptation to not disturb the family's sleep. When he finished the inspection, Thor returned to his bed in the living room, but didn't lie down immediately. He sat for a few minutes, as if doing a mental evaluation of everything he had observed. Only then did he lie down and returned to sleep. The next morning, I observed Thor during breakfast. He seemed more relaxed and satisfied, as if he had fulfilled an important mission. While I drank coffee, he positioned himself near the kitchen window, maintaining his daytime vigilance in a more casual way. It was at that moment I realized something touching. Thor had found his own way to age with dignity. Instead of simply accepting the limitations of age, he had adapted his behavior to continue being useful and protective. I then began documenting his rounds, noting times, duration, and anything that caught his attention during inspections. I discovered that Thor was extremely consistent. He always started at 2:58, always followed the same route, always dedicated similar times to each checkpoint. On nights when there was some unusual movement on the street, a car passing very slowly, someone walking on the sidewalk, or even a cat crossing the garden, Thor would adjust his routine, remaining longer observing at strategic points. Most interesting was that he never woke me to report his discoveries. It was as if he understood that his function was to monitor and evaluate, but would only alert me if my intervention was really necessary. This discovery made me reflect on how we underestimate the intelligence and adaptability of our canine companions, especially when they age. Thor had created a personal security system adequate to his current physical capabilities, but still efficient to keep his family protected. It was on a rainy Tuesday in April that I witnessed Thor's first real interception. I was awake working late on a project when I heard the familiar footsteps beginning his nighttime round. As had become routine, I looked at the clock, 2:58 sharp. That night, I decided to continue working on the living room computer, keeping the lights off so as not to interfere with Thor's routine. He began his inspection as always, but when he reached the front window, his behavior changed dramatically. Thor became completely motionless, with his body tense and ears erect. It was a posture I hadn't seen since his youth, when he was more reactive to external stimuli. His snout pointed directly toward the street, and I could see that something had seriously caught his attention. I got up silently and approached the window to see what was happening. On the street, under the dim light of the street lamp, there was a man standing in front of the neighbor's gate. He wasn't simply passing by, he was clearly observing the houses, moving suspiciously between the shadows. Thor remained in his surveillance position for more than 15 minutes. During all that time, he didn't emit a single sound, but his concentration was total. His eyes didn't leave the man on the street for even a second. It was impressive to see how my senior companion maintained military discipline in his observation. If this story is moving you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see how it continues. The man finally moved away, but Thor didn't relax immediately. He continued observing until he was certain the threat had completely passed. Only then did he complete his normal round through the other windows and house checkpoints. The next morning, I discovered that our neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, had reported to the police that someone had tried to force her gate during the early morning hours. The times matched exactly with what Thor had observed. This incident made me realize that my companion's nighttime rounds weren't just a compensatory behavior of age. He was really detecting and monitoring suspicious activities in the neighborhood. His experience and sharp instinct, combined with the systematic routine he had developed, made him an extraordinarily efficient guardian. I then began to value these rounds even more. Thor wasn't just a senior dog trying to stay useful. He was a true security professional who had adapted his methods to his current capabilities. In the following weeks, I observed two more similar situations. In one, Thor detected a car that passed several times down the street during his round, always slowing down in front of the houses. In the other, he identified someone who was watching our house from across the street for more than half an hour. In both cases, Thor maintained his silent discipline. He monitored, evaluated, and only relaxed when he considered the situation had normalized. It was mature and intelligent behavior that demonstrated how age had brought wisdom instead of just limitations. I spoke again with Dr. Marina about these observations. Thor developed what we call adaptive guard behavior, she explained. Senior dogs frequently compensate for physical limitations with greater attention and more subtle protection methods. He understood that he no longer needs to be aggressive or vocal to be a good guardian. This made complete sense. Thor had gone from being a young Rottweiler who barked at any suspicious noise to an experienced veteran who knew how to distinguish between real threats and false alarms. His age had brought discernment and efficiency. I then decided to install some discreet security cameras to better document Thor's nighttime work. Not that I doubted him, but I wanted to have complete records of his routine to better understand all the details of his method. The recordings revealed even more impressive aspects of his behavior. Thor not only checked the obvious entry points, but also observed blind spots, paid attention to changes in street lighting, and even reacted to alterations in the neighborhood's sound patterns. One night, the cameras showed Thor interrupting his round to investigate a sound coming from the roof. It was just a cat, but he dedicated sufficient time to be sure before continuing his inspection. On another occasion, he spent extra time checking a window where the curtain was slightly different from its usual position. These details showed a level of attention and memory that impressed me deeply. Thor had created a complete mental map of the house and its surroundings, and any alteration was immediately detected. Most touching was seeing how he adapted his routine as necessary. On nights of heavy rain, when external sounds were masked, he dedicated more time to each observation point. On full moon nights, when visibility was better, his visual inspection was more detailed. Thor had become a genuine professional, using his experience and wisdom to keep our family safe, in a way that respected his physical limitations, but maximized his mental and sensory capabilities. After 2 months documenting Thor's nighttime rounds, I decided to share this discovery with my family. My sister Paula, who lives in Portland and has always been very attached to Thor since he was a puppy, was deeply moved when I told her about his behavior. "Charles, you don't realize the gift you have at home," she said during our phone conversation. "Thor is dedicating his remaining strength to take care of you all. This is unconditional love in its purest state." Her words made me reflect even more on my companion's silent dedication. While I slept peacefully every night, Thor was awake, fulfilling a mission he had assigned himself. I then resolved to change my approach. Instead of just observing discreetly, I decided to demonstrate my recognition for his work. I began leaving special treats near his bed, which he would find upon finishing his rounds. I also adjusted his diet to include supplements that benefit joints, since his nighttime activities demanded more from his aging body. Continue following this exciting journey. Subscribe to the channel. Thor's response was immediate and touching. He began seeking me out right after completing his rounds, coming to my bedroom for a quick pet before returning to sleep. It was as if he was reporting that everything was safe and under control. During this period, I also noticed that Thor had developed a complementary daytime routine. He chose strategic points in the house where he could observe both the main entrance and the backyard simultaneously. His favorite armchair in the living room offered a perfect view of the street, and he occupied it religiously during the hours I was working. It was then that something happened that completely changed our family dynamic. On a Thursday night, around 3:15 a.m., Thor broke his silent protocol for the first time. He came to my bedroom and woke me with a gentle paw touch. Initially, I thought he might be feeling unwell or needing to go outside for bathroom needs. But when I got up and followed him, I realized he was leading me directly to the living room window. His behavior was different, alert, but not anxious. It was as if he was saying, "I need you to see this." Looking through the window, I saw 2 men trying to force the lock of the neighbor's car parked on the street. Thor had detected the criminal activity and for the first time decided it was necessary to alert me directly. I immediately called the police, who arrived quickly and managed to arrest the thieves red-handed. During the entire episode, Thor remained calm but vigilant at my side, like a true security partner. The next morning, our neighbor, Mr. Anderson, came to thank us. "If it weren't for you folks, I would have lost my car," he said. When I explained that all the credit belonged to Thor and his nighttime surveillance routine, he was impressed. I always thought Thor was getting too quiet with age. I never imagined he was working while we all slept, commented Mr. Anderson, looking at my companion with new respect. This incident marked a turning point in the relationship between Thor and the entire neighborhood. When the story spread, other residents began seeking me out to tell about similar situations they had observed. Mrs. Williams, who lived 3 houses down, said she had also noticed her senior golden retriever developing similar behaviors. "Maybe our old-timers know more about security than we imagine," she reflected during a sidewalk conversation. I then began researching more about adaptive behaviors in senior dogs and discovered that Thor wasn't unique. Many guard dogs develop compensatory strategies when they age, maintaining their protective function through methods that suit their current physical capabilities. What made Thor special was the systematization and consistency of his approach. He had created a personal protocol that maximized his efficiency while minimizing physical wear. During the following weeks, our family routine adjusted to recognize and support Thor's work. I installed a soft nightlight in the hallway to facilitate his rounds, adjusted his bed to a position that offered a better view of the main entrance, and established specific times for his post-round treats. Thor responded to these changes with even more dedication. He began including additional checks in his routine when he perceived unusual movement in the neighborhood. On nights when there were parties at neighbors' houses, he increased the frequency of his observations. During storms, when external noises were altered, he adapted his detection methods. Most exciting was seeing how he had found a new source of purpose in old age. Instead of simply accepting the limitations of age, Thor had transformed them into advantages, using his experience and wisdom to be an even more efficient guardian. My entire family began referring to him affectionately as our nighttime security chief, and Thor seemed to understand and appreciate this recognition, carrying himself with renewed dignity during his daytime activities. 6 months after discovering Thor's secret routine, our lives had transformed in ways I never could have imagined. The entire neighborhood knew the story of my vigilant companion, and Thor had become a small local celebrity. Dr. Marina invited me to share the experience at a canine behavior seminar she was organizing at Colorado State University. Thor's adaptability could inspire other pet owners to observe their senior dogs more carefully, she explained. During the presentation, I showed videos of Thor's nighttime rounds and explained how his routine had evolved over the months. The audience of veterinarians, students, and pet owners was fascinated by the systematization and efficiency my companion had developed. This is a perfect example of how senior dogs can find new ways to contribute to the family when we respect their limitations and value their capabilities, commented Dr. Roberts, an animal behavior specialist present at the event. This story is reaching its end. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the conclusion. After the lecture, several pet owners approached me to share similar stories. A lady named Margaret said her senior border collie had developed the habit of checking all doors before bedtime. Another gentleman, John, shared that his 10-year-old German Shepherd had created a morning yard inspection routine, detecting any object that had been moved during the night. These conversations made me realize that Thor represented something much greater than a simple, isolated case. He symbolized the capacity for reinvention and purpose that our canine companions maintain even in old age. During this period, I began documenting not only the nighttime rounds, but also how Thor had become a mentor to other dogs in the neighborhood. During our daytime walks, younger dogs seemed to respect him in a special way, as if recognizing his wisdom and experience. Thor's routine also expanded to include a morning perimeter inspection of the house. He would wake up with me at 6:30 a.m. and, before even eating, would do a quick but complete check of all the points he had monitored during the night. It was like he was doing a daytime report of nighttime events. One Sunday morning, I found a strange footprint in the soft earth near the kitchen window. Thor had detected it during his round and had strategically positioned his bed to maintain continuous observation of that point. When I showed him the footprint, his tail wagged with satisfaction as if saying, "I knew you'd eventually notice." This level of non-verbal communication we developed became extraordinary. Thor learned to show me points of interest through subtle body postures, and I learned to interpret his signals. It was a genuine partnership between man and dog. Thor's impact on neighborhood security also became measurable. In the 6 months since I discovered his rounds, our street had registered a significant reduction in attempted burglaries and vandalism. Criminals seemed to have realized the area was being monitored, even without knowing exactly by whom. During this period, Thor also taught me valuable lessons about aging with dignity. He never resigned himself to the limitations of age, but transformed them into opportunities to develop new skills and methods. His adaptability was inspiring. On one memorable night, while watching Thor complete his round with his usual precision, I reflected on how many other silent heroes existed out there. Senior dogs who had found their own ways to continue protecting and serving their families. Thor had taught me that age doesn't mean retirement, but rather evolution. He transformed his physical limitations into strategic advantages, using his experience and wisdom to be more efficient than he had ever been when young. Veterinarian Dr. Marina told me during a consultation, "Thor isn't just aging well, he's aging with purpose, and that makes all the difference in a senior dog's quality of life." I then began writing a detailed diary about our journey, documenting not only Thor's activities, but also the lessons I was learning about loyalty, dedication, and the capacity for reinvention that our canine companions possess. This diary became a source of inspiration for other pet owners facing the challenges of caring for senior dogs. Many sought me out for advice on how to identify and value the unique talents their companions developed in their golden years. Thor had become more than my pet. He was my teacher, my security partner, and my example of how to face life's challenges with creativity and determination. 1 year after discovering Thor's secret, our story reached a point I never could have imagined. My companion had become an inspiration not only for me, but for an entire community of pet owners who learned to value the wisdom of senior dogs. During this period, Thor maintained his nighttime routine with impressive consistency. Even when torrential rains or extreme temperatures made conditions challenging, he never missed his 3 a.m. watch shift. His dedication was unwavering. However, I also began noticing natural signs of advancing age. Thor moved a bit slower during his rounds and occasionally needed longer pauses between checks, but his attention and detection ability remained as sharp as ever. Dr. Marina guided me to make small adjustments to support Thor in his self-imposed mission. We installed non-slip mats at points where he traveled most frequently and adjusted his bed height for easier access. These adaptations allowed him to continue his work with comfort and safety. Don't miss the exciting conclusion of this story. Subscribe to the channel. It was on a September night, exactly 1 year after I first observed his rounds, that I witnessed the most touching moment of our entire journey. Thor had detected something at the living room window and had remained observing longer than usual. When I approached to see what had caught his attention, I discovered it was an abandoned puppy at our gate. Thor had not only detected the animal in danger, but had also understood that the situation required human intervention. He came to get me with the same determination he had shown the night he detected the car thieves. We rescued the puppy, a small mixed breed that was clearly malnourished and scared. During the following weeks, Thor assumed a protective role with the little one, whom we decided to call Luna. It was extraordinary to see how he adapted his routine to include extra checks at the place where Luna slept. This experience made me realize that Thor had evolved from a property guardian to a true family protector in its broadest sense. His caring capacity now extended to any vulnerable being that needed protection. Veterinarian Dr. Silva, who cared for little Luna, was impressed with Thor's behavior. "It's rare to see a senior dog adopt a puppy so naturally. Thor demonstrates exceptional emotional maturity, he observed during a consultation. During the following months, I watched Thor teaching Luna about the house's security protocols. The little one began accompanying him on reduced versions of his rounds, learning to identify important observation points. It was as if Thor was transmitting his knowledge to the next generation. Our story came to the attention of a local journalist who wrote an article about the silent guardian of suburbia for a regional newspaper. The report highlighted how Thor had transformed the limitations of age into innovative protection strategies. After the article's publication, we received hundreds of messages from pet owners across America sharing similar stories. Many reported that, inspired by Thor's story, they began observing their senior dog's behavior more attentively and discovered talents and routines that had previously gone unnoticed. If you made it this far, your family is lucky. Subscribe for more inspiring stories. Thor's story taught me that our canine companions possess an adaptability and sense of purpose that we frequently underestimate. They don't passively resign themselves to age's limitations, but find creative ways to continue contributing to the family's well-being. Today, at 9 years old, Thor continues his nighttime rounds with the same dedication, though with small adjustments to accommodate his physical needs. Luna, now 6 months old, has become his official apprentice, creating a natural succession line for our family's protection. Looking back, I realized that discovering Thor's nighttime activities wasn't just about canine behavior. It was a profound lesson about loyalty, purpose, and the ability to find meaning in all stages of life. Thor showed me that age isn't a limitation, but an opportunity to apply wisdom and experience in new and valuable ways. He transformed what could have been a passive decline into an active evolution of his protective abilities. Our journey continues each dawn, when Thor assumes his silent post as family guardian. And I, now aware of the gift I have, sleep peacefully knowing we're protected by the unconditional love and unwavering dedication of the best companion anyone could have. Thor's story proves that true heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they have 4 paws, silver hairs on their muzzle, and a heart bigger than their age might suggest. And they continue protecting those they love, silently, faithfully, unconditionally.